We already knew that the NDP's policies that are terrible for business would be detrimental to the economy and extra hard on the oil and gas industry that once made up for over a third of the Alberta economy. And now we're seeing companies selling off their Canadian assets and running from the oil sands, while majors like Suncor and CNRL scoop them up. The way I see it, it's pretty clear at this point that this was all part of the plan when big companies like Suncor, Shell, and CNRL backed the NDP's climate leadership plan that included a carbon tax that was sure to make us less competitive. These guys plan long term, and I suspect they knew that they could cash in huge once foreign companies started to flee. Suncor CEO Steve Williams has even stated that he doesn't think the exodus from the oil sands from international companies is over yet, and that he doesn't think there are a lot of companies out there with the balance sheet to buy any assets. But guess who does have that capital? You got it, Suncor does. Actually, they'll free up a bunch of capital once they finish off the construction of an offshore project on the East Coast and the Fort Hills oil sands mine, both of which will be producing by the end of the year. So there's no doubt that these bigger companies will be buying up oil sands assets in the fire sale caused by foreign interests running from Rachel Notley's attack on investors. Something Williams claims is sure to result in incredible opportunities. But how is this affecting publicly traded juniors? You know, the little guy in the game that the NDP say they want to support while making big deals with majors to monopolize the industry. Well, the exodus in foreign investments in Alberta isn't the only one going on in the province. Since 2007, just over a quarter of smaller publicly traded oil and gas companies that produce between 500 and 10,000 barrels per day remain, down from 94 to 25. 17 juniors in just the last 30 months are no longer publicly traded due to low oil prices and Notley's senseless decision to hike corporate taxes and bring in a carbon tax, proving that the only thing the NDP know how to do well is kill private enterprise with taxes. And now that the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Catherine McKenna, has introduced regulations on methane emissions that will cost oil and gas companies even more, these junior companies just can't handle the financial burden. One thing to keep in mind is that the majority of Alberta's plays have already been discovered. So the role of a lot of these junior companies is in exploration, where it can cost over $10 million for them just to drill one well. These plays require very expensive horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing that aren't always financially viable for a smaller outfit unless you're producing about 10,000 barrels a day to survive, according to the CEO of Aspen Leaf Energy, Brian Gould. That means that the majority of these companies have simply moved over to private equity, which tells us that there's simply no interest in Canadian projects anymore because they're just way too expensive. And to think, just a few short years ago, there was an excitement over these new techniques that would allow for these companies to tap into resources that they were previously unable to produce from. And that excitement has now moved over to the United States, where they've figured out a way to decrease costs on their shale plays in what can only be called an energy revolution for them. They went from a ban on oil exports to shipping LNG in a heartbeat, and now they're taking over what could have been Canada's exports to foreign markets. Except it's so backwards here that we can't even get a pipeline to ship our product to markets outside of the United States. And hey, I thought Rachel Notley and the NDP were in it to fight for the little guy, like I mentioned. Instead, what their policies do is work against the little guy, creating a climate where their bad ideas that they make the rule just pick and choose who wins and loses. And in this case, it's the major corporations that are cashing in. And make no mistake that this will definitely spill over onto the service companies, kneecapping their profits and causing yet another purge of the businesses that provide specialty services like core logging, rig moves, and other analyses, because it would allow the majors to price fix. Steve Williams says the exodus of foreign investments from Alberta isn't over yet, and he's absolutely right about that. But neither is the attack on businesses, and the Alberta NDP are just helping it all along. For the Rebel.media, I'm Holly Nicholas. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to click the subscribe button for our Rebel Canada YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on any of the content that you just won't find anywhere else.